Hello, folks. So, a few videos back, we have created an RPG character in JavaScript, and today we will see how we can create the same using Python. And there is a very popular library called Pygame, which is used specifically for making games. Now, the website is ugly, but trust me, this is the real website, and this is also an amazing library. Now, you can also check out the GitHub, and Pygame also has something called Pygame CE or Community Editions, which is basically some forks of the main repo. And there are a lot more repos created for several purposes. Now, let's go back to our VS Code and let's see how we can create this simple RPG character using Pygame. Now, in my VS Code, I have a folder called PyCode, and here inside the 2D movement folder, I will create my main.py file. And we also have the sprite sheet that we will be using. And this is something that I created using Sprite. I will leave a link in the description and you can simply download it from there. Now in the main.py file, first things first, I have to import Pygame. Now to make sure that this is working, I will open my terminal and I have to go inside my bytecode and inside the 2D movement. And here if I simply write python main.py, I see hello from the Pygame community, which means that this line is working fine. Now, in case you are getting some kind of an error, that means Pygame is not installed, and you can simply install Pygame by typing pip install Pygame. Now, in my case, nothing will happen because it's already installed, so requirement already satisfied. But in your case, if you don't have the Pygame installed, so you can install it like this. Now, after installing Pygame, what we need to do is we need to start our Pygame. So we'll do pygame.init. And then let's create a window, which is very important for playing our game. So window width, let's give 600 and window height, let's give another 600. And then we'll create a screen. So a screen can be created using pygame dot display dot set mode. And here we can just give the window width and window height. Now, if we try to run our game, we will see something interesting. So one window is coming, but it is closing immediately. And that is because we don't yet have a game loop. So I will create a variable called running. It will be true for now. And then we can create a game loop like this. While running, we will consider our game to be running. We are not doing anything right now. And in the end, we can close our game. So pygame.quit. Now let's run our game once again. And we have a window. But there is a problem. And that is we cannot close our window because closing is an event in our game. And this is something we have not added. And hence closing will be a pain. We can close it anyway because Windows has other functions that helps us closing such kind of programs. But ideally, we should handle it in our game only. So what we can do is I will remove the pass, and here in our game we have a lot of events. So I can write something like for event in pygame dot event dot get, and here I will check the event type. So the event dot type is pygame.quit. This is like clicking our pause button. In that case, what we want to do is we want to assign the running to be false, and hence our window should close, and now it will have a good behavior. So if I click on the cross, our game is ending. Now let's take things forward, and we have to define a few more things to effectively make our game. And I will start by changing the title. So pygame.display.setCaption. Let's name it RPG player. Now, if you may wonder what this is, we can simply run our game once again, and this is the title. Now, then we have to give a background. Right now it's black. Let's give a green, like a grassy background, and I will give an RGB value. This is like a dark green. And then we have a sprite sheet, and we have to import that. So I will do pygame.image.load, and we have to give the name. Since it's in the same folder, we don't have to take care of the path. So, and convert alpha. Then we have to take the total image width. This is 1280, and the total image height is also the same. Now, from where I'm getting that? This is basically our image width and height. So this is our image in the folder. And if I simply go to properties and details, so as you can see, this is our dimensions. And each character is like 1/4 of that. So we have to take care of that next. So sprite width is basically 320 and sprite height is 320 again. Now you can also do a total image height divided by 4 or something like that. But since it's so simple, we can just use it like this. Now we cannot use the length and height directly. We also have to scale it because scaling means basically how big our character will appear in the screen, something like that. So I will just make it 1/4 of what we will get initially. So scaled width and scaled height will be different. And this will be, let's convert it to an integer, although this will be 8080 only. And so what I will do is sprite width times the scale. If the scale is, for example, let's say 0.33, then this may be required. And similarly for the scaled height also. Now, next we need to define a class of player. So class player, and inside in Python, this is something that we have. We have an init function, and in the init, we need to define the x and y and other properties related to our player. So self.x, let's give a window width divided by 2. This is basically the center of the screen. But to get the absolute center, we have to subtract the scale width divided by 2 also. Now the double division means integer division. If it is 2.1 or something like that, it will become 2. And similarly for the self.y also, it will be window height instead divided by 2 minus scaled height divided by 2. Then comes the speed. So self.speed, let's give a speed of 5. And now we need to define some frames. So if in our sprite, if we see the y-axis, I mean the rows of the frame is actually the different pose. So for example, this is the forward movement, this is the forward idle, backward movement, and side movement. Whereas the different columns are like what is the state of the movement, something like that. For all sprite sheets, this is very much similar. So we just have to define that. That's all. So let's take the initial frame x to be 0 and the initial frame y to be 1 because the second row is actually the idle, and that is what we want in general. Now, what is the maximum number of frames? So we'll take that as a max frame, that is 4, we all know. Then we will also take something called a frame timer. This will be required for animation. Initially it is 0, self dot frame interval. Now the frames can be very fast, but we need to slow it down sometimes. So for that purpose, we will need these things. And there will be a speed difference between our walking and our idle. So this will be the interval for our idle. So this is, let's say, 30. And now lastly, we need to check if our player is moving or not. So initially the moving will be false. We can set it to true. And we also need to give the player a direction. So let's say initially the direction is idle. Now we also need to define another variable since we have directions, and I will name that variable as animations. And animations will have few types of animations. So we need to give our animation some names, and we have to assign the appropriate frame for it. So the frame Y is taking care of it. So I will name the first one as walk down, and we all know this is the first row. So the frame Y value will be 0. Then comes our idle. This is 1. Then comes our walk up. This is 2. And then we will have 2. One is called walk left. This will be 3. Another one is walk right. This will also be 3 because the last one is actually sideways and we have to flip in our function to get the appropriate movement. Now we will take care of that. So this is fine for now. Now we have our player, and then what we can do is something like this. We can create a player. So this is only the class of player. Now we can create an instance of player like this, player equals to player. Now we will also need a clock to run our game to take care of the timings. So what I will do is I will define another variable below the running. Let's create a clock equals to Pygame. dot time dot clock. Mm. Now, we have everything defined. Now we need to take care of the player values. So we need to draw our player and we also need to update like where our player is. And so we need some functions for that. So in our game loop, we are only checking the event for our closing of the game. We are not really doing anything in our game loop. So what we really need to do here is we need to update our player. Player means the player values, X and Y position and the frames and etc. etc. So we need to update our player and we also need to draw our player. And that's not all. We can also do a clock dot tick and 60. So 60 is like we are running the game at 60 frames per second. And yeah, I think that's fine for now. And the next thing that we need to do is this. We need to define these two functions. So def update player. And in this function, what we want to do is we want to first of all assign the player dot moving to false. And then we will check accordingly if it is true or not. And we need to define some keys also. So pygame dot keys dot get pressed. So whenever we are pressing some keys, we need to take care of a few things, and that is what this keys variable will do. Now, if keys, and here we'll write pygame dot key w. So if our w key is pressed and our player dot y is greater than 0, in that case, we have to change the y value. So player y should be subtracted by player dot speed, and player dot direction will be walk up. And lastly, player dot moving should be changed to true. So what is really happening here is, so keys is like all the keys that we have. We are checking if not have like all the keys that we have and that is currently getting pressed, and we are assigning that to keys. Now we are checking if our W key is being pressed, and if that is pressed, and considering our Y value is greater than 0, which basically means our player is in the map. That's all. And in that case, what we will do is we will move our player upwards. That's all. That's what all it is doing. The direction becomes walk up and our player moving becomes true. That's all. It's actually very simple. And we will have few more cases like this. But once we have something, what we need to do also is we have to assign the appropriate frame Y value for our animations. So we have an animations variable. So here I will assign the player dot direction. So it is basically it is basically animations. And here the player dot direction is walk up. So it is basically something like this. So it will take the value of walkup, which is 2, and accordingly display the animations. Now we will not get the display right now because that is something that will happen inside our draw player function. But yeah, we will do that soon. Then what we need to do is we need to do player dot frame timer. We have created a frame timer. We will add that by 1, and we also need to take care of the intervals. So current interval is nothing but player dot frame interval if player is moving, else our player dot idle frame interval. So what this means in one line is we will take our player dot frame interval if our player dot moving is true, otherwise we will take the idle frame interval. This is a Pythonic way of writing this line. If you may remember, we have created one frame interval that is 10 and an idle frame interval that is 30. What is the difference between the two? We will see soon once our player starts moving. We will make both of this 10 or both of this 30 and we will see the problem. And what this is doing is it is checking if the player is moving or not. If moving, it is assigning the frame interval, otherwise the idle interval. That's all. Now, we will do player dot frame timer. If this is greater than equals to my current interval, what we need to do is player dot frame x. This will be player dot frame x plus 1 modulus of player dot max frame. And lastly, player dot frame timer, we will assign the value to be 0. So what we are doing here is we are basically changing the frame X. So frame X is basically we are animating like this. So we are animating at an interval of 10. So the interval of 10 is basically controlling the speed and we are animating accordingly. Now we will not get anything because we don't yet have a draw function. This is like theoretically doing this thing. So we will have a draw player and here def draw player. Now here we have defined our screen to be green. So we will first do a screen.fill green so that we have a grassy background. And then we have to draw our sprite. Now we have already defined a sprite. So what I will do here is sprite equals to pygame dot surface. And here we have to give our sprite width and height, which is basically 320 and 320 we have defined above. So, and then it will take another argument, pygame dot src alpha. Then we will do sprite dot blit. And here we need to pass a bunch of variables. So first thing is the sprite sheet. Then we will pass a 0, 0. And then um, we need to pass that what are our frames. So our frames are something like this. So frame x, this is basically player dot frame x times our sprite width, then our player dot frame y times our sprite height, and then we will also pass our sprite width and the sprite height. So it is bit more, but that is all we need to do. Basically, the last four arguments that we are passing inside a tuple is basically what are our frames in the absolute values and our basically sprite width and height. Now we will also have a scaled sprite because this is the absolute sprite value, but we are also scaling it down. So pygame dot transform dot scale, and this will be basically sprite comma inside a tuple. We will give our scaled height, scaled width, and then the scaled height. So scaled width and then the scaled height. Although both values are same, so there will be no issues. But yeah, we need to keep things proper. Now, if the player dot direction um, is walk left, we need to check one more thing, and that is we need to flip our player. So in all our cases, our player will walk as it is, but not for our walk left. So we will do is this scale sprite equals to pygame dot transform dot flip, and we need to pass our scale sprite, and then we will pass true and false. Now, lastly, what we need to do is we will do is screen dot blit, and we need to pass our scaled sprite, and I think there is an issue with the indentation or something like that. No, I don't think so. And then we have to pass our player dot x and our player dot y inside a variable. Let me try to find the issue that we are getting with the screen. And the issue is nothing complex. There is a little bit of a space issue. So either this needs to be moved forward or everything else needs to be moved a little bit backward. So this is also a problem with indented languages and where we are not using brackets. So now we can run our game once again, and let me do a python main.py, and we have an issue, and that is model pygame has no attribute called keys. I think we are having a problem with the keys. Did you mean key? Yeah, actually I meant key. The variable is keys, but it is pygame.key. And we again have an issue. And this should be src alpha, not, okay. So there is a typo here, src alpha. Now we will have our game. Now we don't really have out there. That is a problem. And the issue is that in our game loop, after the update player and draw player, we also need to add something to draw our game. So we have to do a pygame.display.flip. And now if we run our game, we will have our player and we can also move upwards. But the other buttons don't really work, only the upward button works. That is because we have not added those things. So when we are pressing W, we are moving upwards. Now we need to add the remaining. So elif if the keys that we are pressing is pygame.ks, and we need to check if the player.y is less than window height minus the scaled height of the player. So why we are checking the second condition, only the first condition should work, is because we don't want our player to move outside of our screen. And that is all we are doing here. And what we need to do is player.py plus equals to player dot speed, player dot direction will become walk down in this case. Then player dot moving should be true. Now these things will have repetitions. So we'll just copy that and we'll also change that. And lastly, there will be an else condition, which is our idle condition. So we'll do a player dot direction should be idle and our player dot moving should be false. Yes. And now what we need to change here. So here we need to check if we are pressing A or a D. And if we are doing so, we need to check if the X value is greater than 0 here. And in the second case, we need to check if the X value is less than the window width minus the scaled width. That is what we need to check. And here we will walk left, and here we will walk right. Now if we run the game once again, what do we get? So up is fine, down is fine, left and right is not fine, because we are actually changing the y value, and here we actually need to change the x value. So x here should be minus equals to the player dot speed, and same goes for here. That is plus equals to speed. Now if we run the game once again, we have a beautiful game, and no, not so beautiful, not so beautiful, because when we are pressing S, something strange is happening. Yes, so we have made a mistake here. So this is why, okay, so this thing should be X minus equals to, and this thing should be X. Now we will have a beautiful game. I'm certain of that. And as you can see, we can freely move around. Now, what will happen if, let's say, we don't have two timers? We have only one timer and it is 10. Let's also increase the scale. So the scaled is 25. Let's make it 0.5, like twice the size. Now, as you can see, the player is bigger. And as you can see, the idle is actually very fast. Compared to that, if I just make it 30, where is that? If I just make it 30, the idle will be much slower and much more relaxed. I think this is a better approach, because since our player is idle, we don't want her to like move around too much. So that's it for this, folks. And if you have learned something new in this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to help me grow it fast. And if you want to discuss more about game dev, AI, or tech, anything related to tech, you can join my Discord server. I will keep the link in the description below. And I will see you soon with another very interesting video. So see ya.